Well, tonight I'm actually going to have some special guests on tonight. If you're not aware of the Witnesses or the Witnesses History Channel or Watchtower History Channel, which is hosted by two amazing people, Jeff Mesra and Paul, I'm going to have them on the show, and I think that they, Rick and the viewers and listeners, I think they're the best source of accurate historical information on the Watchtower that I've ever seen. And what they've got, which is actual letters written by Rutherford or from Russell or from the organisation itself, from the archive, is just second to none. So they're actually incredible, considering they're not Jehovah's Witnesses. So, and they've actually helped a lot of people in terms of sourcing material for their books, and it's wonderful that they're actually making themselves known, and that they are a really valuable source of information. So they're going to be on the show with me tonight, fingers crossed. So that's going to be something really special. I'm just checking, just a bit of a sound check. Jeff Mesra and Paul, are you there? Just to identify that they've got that connection. And I'll just wait for them to come through. Paul's here. How are you, Paul?
Good. How are you?
Fantastic, my friend. And has Jeff come out of the hairdressers, or is he?
He's still in makeup.
He's still in makeup. Well, just tell Jeff we lost him here. If he wants to.
Yay!
Have we got Jeff?
Yes, I'm on. Can you hear me?
I can. Paul was informing you that I was worried that you were at the hairdressers and he said you're in makeup. And in true ex-Jehovah's Witness style, I said, we would prefer you as a man, but if you want to be a lady, that's fine. We don't mind. So it's a broad
You got to be careful, that Paul. He spreads a lot of rumors.
Oh,
believe anything he says.
Yeah, I know. I'll do a little bit of an introduction. I'd like to introduce Jeff Mesra and Paul to the program. This is a real privilege, and for those of you who want to dig deeply into Watchtower, not really how can I put it, if you want an academic understanding of Watchtower and also a factual account from the archive, not commentary, you cannot do any better than what Jeff Mesra and Paul are doing with the Watchtower History channel that they have. And I won't steal their thunder, the information that they have is literal documents. So when they talk about, for instance, Rutherford, Judge Rutherford, or Russell, or any of the presidents, we are talking about handwritten letters. They have their research is second to none, and they are a go-to for anybody that wants to, for instance, if you're writing a book or whatever it happens to be. These two are absolutely outstanding, and they've never been witnesses. So without further ado, welcome to the program, Jeff and Paul.
Thank you for having us.
I'll start off with you, Jeff. You've never been a Jehovah's Witness at all, so you've got no skin in the game. First of all, how did you even get interested in doing all this deep dive research into Jehovah's Witnesses?
Well, when I was younger, the JWs knocked on the door and we studied with them for a while. But they sounded to me like everybody else. If you don't believe us, then you're lost. And it set me on a path to go to a lot of different churches, start digging around. But I started collecting the literature. And eventually I started collecting the older literature. And eventually I ran into different collectors who we swapped some materials. And eventually I grew out of one room into another room and bookshelf after bookshelf after another, and there's simply no room for all of the archives that we have now. Boxes in the garage. It's just the stuff goes on and on and on. So I don't even know everything I have. There's so much of it.
So just for our viewers and our listeners, this is the original copies that we're talking about here.
Yes. So some things we have are actual handwritten letters, like from Judge Rutherford and other presidents. We've done, Paul and I did a couple programs on some of these letters and some of the documentation. Some of the stories you get just from handwritten letters that you can find entire stories that's just not in the literature anywhere. So it's very, very fascinating, some of the secrets and different fascinating tidbits of history that you can find just from some of the letters. Or newspapers. There were even newspapers that went out every week to Watchtower subscribers back in the day, back in the teens and 1920s.
Thank you. Paul, I'll ask you, quick, how did you get caught up with Jeff's rooms and rooms of Watchtower? Like, how did he coerce you to, not coerce, but how did he get you involved in all of this research?
Coerce is the right word. No.
Jeff and I have been friends for a few years, and it's comical because he asked me, he wanted to do this YouTube channel that we started, and I didn't want to do it. I was like, no.
You're a smart man.
Yeah, I was like, let's not do it. And then, he talked me into it. We started, we did it, and it got a lot better feedback. And I didn't realize how many people out there really, really looking for help and really looking for, have questions about all this stuff. And the feedback we're getting, both on the channel and mainly private email, because a lot of people don't want to come forward with their names or this or that, it has been phenomenal. So I'm glad, now in hindsight, I'm glad I got involved with Jeff with this.
I wanted to ask you, I'll just start off with Jeff, and I've seen your videos. If I may take you, well, I'll start off with Judge Rutherford and his involvement with, how can I put it, well, his attempts first off at really saying, anyway, his behaviour towards Hitler. I'll leave it there. What have you found about his behaviour towards Hitler in the facts? Can you just sort of give us a little bit of haven't put you on the spot there, I know you've done some work on that. What have you found in the archives and communications? Can you talk to that, Jeff?
Well, a lot of it stems from the anti-Semitism that he had. And in the 20s, he was starting to eradicate any connection with the Jewish faith. Russell was a very strong Zionist and believed that Israel returning to their homeland would have been a prophecy, a fulfilled prophecy. Rutherford was trying to say that they were Israel returned to their homeland and trying to bolster that they were the chosen ones.
Right.
And they changed that. There's a sheep and goats doctrine that he changed. And literally the reason he changed it was he looked at the prophecy or the parable in Matthew 25 and it says, when did you serve me? Well, it says, when I was sick and in prison. And Rutherford says, well, I was sick and in prison, so it's all about me. Well, come to find out, he really wasn't sick when he was in prison, but that's a whole other story. So that replacement theology, it brought them to the point in 1931, all the literature started to say, hey, we're Israel, we're the spiritual Jews. Those natural Jews have nothing to do with the plan of God. Well, when Hitler came to power, he wanted to eradicate anything Jewish, and he saw Watchtower as Zionist. So Rutherford quickly writes him a letter saying, oh, no. We don't take money from the Jews. We don't have anything to do with the Jews. We don't think the Jews have anything to do with God's plan. Just leave us alone. He doesn't say anything about leave the Jews alone, nothing, just leave us alone. We believe in what Germany's doing. Just kissing up to him, trying to appease and get on his good side. Unfortunately, that didn't work, and 2 days later, the German government took all of their property. So what did Rutherford do? He went to the people he hated the most and requested help. He went to the United States government. And from the United States government, they were able to use the diplomacy and get the property back. And then it happened again.
Do you have, sorry, Jeff, do you have, the correspondence for these, like in terms of him going to the US government to support?
Yes, it's in the United States government records. Yes, that's in the United States government records they're available online. You can find those anywhere.
Yeah, Matt, our discussion neutrality that's on our site really in the segment that we've done on it cover everything you're asking. And a lot of these documents and everything are posted on our site for that. So anyone who really wants to get a good idea of the historical background of the Rutherford's involvement in all this, I think we did a very factual discussion of what really happened and the truth behind it all.
For my opinion, that was a good overview. We're just skimming the surface of the material that's available. So in the future, we're planning on doing an even deeper dive to get into the U.S. government records with the exact statements that they were using to try and help Hitler or Rutherford. I mean, to get the property back from Hitler. Very fascinating.
Oh, can I ask you a question? When I'm always fascinated in anybody's response when they find the actual correspondence, the actual letters that are going on behind the scene when it comes to Watchtower's political manoeuvring, to realise that on one side they have told the world that they are free from the blood of all men, that they're conscientious objectors, that they've never been involved in politics, they've never been involved in any of these complications. And then you read this, like from an outside observer. I mean, what I'd really would like to know, Paul, how do you assess it from an academic point of view? There's public. It's like they walk both sides of the street. Have you ever seen this before with any other group, or how did you process finding the exact opposite to their stated position, Paul?
That's actually a good question. My background in it is I had my grandmother was a Jehovah Witness back in the day when and was she pioneered for 30 years. So I was around. Yeah, I was around very spiritual people, and back in the day, there were a lot of her friends. She didn't profess to be of the 144,000, but many of her friends did. So they had discussions that typically are discouraged today amongst Jehovah's Witnesses. They would actually say, I remember being a boy, listening, and it was actually very fascinating listening to their takes on everything from Ezekiel, Revelation, what the psalmist meant through this. It's very fascinating that they don't get into now. And so my take on things now is a little bit different. I got to see it from the outside looking in. But at the same time, like I tell Jeff all the time, I used to go with my grandmother and sitting there talking about her. Well, wait, this is what the Bible says about the Jews. Why don't you believe this? Here's what it says literally in the Bible. and go
Yes.
around and run with her. So my observation is a little bit different than most people. I wasn't as affected by it as most people because I didn't take to it, or I didn't have. Well, she was very spiritual. My mother wasn't. My mother became a Jehovah Witness, but she wasn't considered. She was flaky. Considered what do they call that? Spiritual weak. She was never really an example, so I wasn't indoctrinated as like some of the youth are. But with that said, I got to see other families who were their parents were just absolute tyrants and fanatics with the religion, and it just sent them in a whole other direction. So mine is kind of like a little bit different from Jeff's. Jeff's was more like someone who studied with him and said, hey, wait, this isn't going to happen. Mine was more like, wait, my family's involved in this, but I'm not going to be. So I didn't have to go through a lot of the hide and seek, is what I call it, that some of these people have to go through. Like even on the channel we're here now. I mean, I find it so sad that these people have to, because of their families and in job relations, all kinds of stuff, have to conceal their identities because of all this. I hope I
I would like Jeff, if I can, some of the things there's so many things that your channel has discovered, which is just absolutely incredible. And if you can, both of you, talk to us about your discovery, which I mean, I had no idea even that I'm 4 generations of Jehovah's Witness, is the death threats that were issued to to Rutherford, and you actually, and if you can talk to that, and what physical evidence you actually have of all of this going on. Is it possible, Jeff, or Paul? I'll start with Jeff actually, just for convenience. If you can tell us about this death threat. This is unbelievable. So I'm sure our listeners and viewers are really going to enjoy this, and it's incredible. Please fill us in on that detail.
You're not going to find this in the Proclaimers book, that's for sure.
No.
So I have some correspondence, handwritten correspondence by Judge Rutherford, and there was some other correspondence that was sent to a specific person in Missouri. These letters and things, a lot of them, not all of them, were found in old studies in the scriptures purchased in Missouri, and it was inside. But one of them is a handwritten letter from Rutherford saying, if my brother Will should ever kill me, please see to it that he not be prosecuted. So at least Rutherford had a good attitude, and he says, leave it entirely in the Lord's hands. Well, what is he talking about, right? Well, with that letter was another letter. With that letter was another letter, and that letter explains what the whole situation was about. There was a land deal, or a family farm and land, and they wanted to sell it and make some money. And there was a whole squabble and disagreement amongst the family about whether they should sell it or not. And Rutherford didn't think they would get that much money for it, and that's really what it was about. But Will, his brother, threatened to kill him over this family farm squabble. So we have an entire discussion on this letter and all the correspondence that was sent to Rutherford's actual sister in Tipton, Missouri. And then we also dig into Rutherford's brother, William Rutherford. He was a fireman and a police officer in California, and in a lot of trouble with the law. So it's very, very fascinating, quite fascinating history. They do say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Yeah, no. You can imagine from there.
Paul, would you like to add a little bit more to that? I know that it's such a fascinating story where we've got, as you said, Rutherford himself, his handwritten, if my brother kills me, please, don't prosecute him. Would you like to make some comments just on also what you found interesting, just on this little stanza, Paul?
Well, first of all, a lot of our conversations that we do are very spontaneous. And even in one of, I don't remember which conversation it was, Jeff, he discovered he had something signed by Rutherford. So the stuff he gets, I mean, Jeff, this stuff falls into his lap where people are just giving him stuff like that. And basically what I liked about all this, the timing of all this was like 2 weeks before Pastor Russell's death that a lot of this stuff came to fruition.
Really?
So,
okay.
Yeah,
right.
It's pretty incredible. It really is. And what's more incredible is it ends up in Jeff's possession. Is what I always laugh about.
But and you can verify from the newspapers as well, because you can track Rutherford's whereabouts from week to week in the various newspapers, not just from the Bible Student newspaper at that time, the St. Paul Enterprise, but also just the advertisements he was putting in the papers for the lectures he was giving. So you know exactly where he is at a specific time in a specific week. Well, the dating of those letters and the postmark is exactly where you would expect them to be. So that also gives another layer of verification that who would know that information unless they had access to all the old newspapers. So it shows the validity of the paper. So we also, or of the letter, I mean. So we also go into the validity of it, trying to prove the validity. Very interesting.
I don't know, I hope I don't put you on the spot. Have you got records that indicate who actually built the mansion Beth Sarem for Judge Rutherford? I mean, as I said, I only know as much as everybody else does that it actually wasn't funded by Watchtower itself, but private gifts to the society or to Rutherford. And of course, the Watchtower narrative is that he was very sick, and he was so sick in the prison that he apparently doctor's orders was that he needed a mansion to recover from his lung condition. Do you have any documentation on who built it or anything around that? It's very murky. Have you found anything or not? I'll just open it up.
Jeff, before you answer that, did we post that discussion yet?
Well, we've recorded a discussion on it, but we haven't posted it yet. But we'll give a little details.
Yes, Matt, that's coming. That's coming, and I think you'll be.
Oh, okay. What we'll do is we'll do a sneak peek, right? And we'll get Rick to put the dramatic music on, and then you could just give us a little bits and pieces to tease us to get to your channel. But anything that you can give us on that? I didn't realise that we're sitting on the cachet of stuff. So what can you tell us at least on that?
Well, if you read the Proclaimer's book, I'm going to read the quote out of the Proclaimer's book. So it's under the heading House of the Princes. It says, Brother Rutherford had a severe case of pneumonia after his release from unjust imprisonment in 1990. Thereafter, he had only one good lung. Right? So it says,
yes.
When you read it, it sounds like he was sick when he was in prison. Right?
He was. That's what it says in the Proclaimer's book.
But it doesn't quite say that. It says he had a severe case of pneumonia after his release from unjust imprisonment. So not while he was in prison. After his release. Why are they mentioning it in regards to the imprisonment? Right? There's a telegram. We have some prison correspondence that was sent to, I call them the Watchtower bunch, like the Brady bunch, or the Bethel bunch, I guess you can call them. And in one of those correspondences is something from the National Labor Tribune that says, hurry home, and we're so happy and thank the Lord that you've been healthy while you were imprisoned. In the St. Paul Enterprise, these weekly Watchtower newspapers that went to various Watchtower subscribers, we see what Rutherford's doing from week to week. He's going to various congregations and speaking and doing various things, no mention of his sickness, until a full 2.5 months later.
Right.
Then it mentions he has pneumonia. So why is the Proclaimer's book combining his pneumonia experience with his prison experience? Well, I'm not going to answer that. We will. We'll show the documentation on that and tease you a little bit. But
what? You know what I was thinking, Jeff and Paul. I don't know whether this was the intention, but as a mentally diseased apostate, which neither of you are because you never had the glorious privilege of being baptized, is I started hearing, and all I could see was the honest judge with one lung going to all of the congregations with the one good lung. And I really there was a little rivulet of tears starting to come down my goodness. But now to find out maybe he wasn't so sick and he's there. Oh my goodness. He's not such a hero anymore. Goodness me, what have you done to me?
But now even follow the money. Oh, go ahead, Paul.
That's basically, we'll cut to the chase and we'll end it right here. He needed a mansion and that ends it.
But the money was donated from a couple sources, and we know that from the deeds, the various deeds and such, right? And you can find that stuff online. But I had to dig into some of the ancestral records. So you go to Ancestry.com and some of the other sites and find out more about their families, right? But the doctor who suggested Rutherford move to California, when you research his life, you find out he went to prison for practicing in the state of California without a medical license. And a lot more behind that.
It gives a whole different.
Hey, Jeff,
Yes, Paul.
My doctor, he prescribed me a mansion too.
Yeah.
Yes, I know. Yes. And so, and also, I don't know whether you're going to touch on this. I have did a tiny bit of research. This was, so hopefully I got my timing right, is that the mansion for the one good lung or the one with the bad lung is happening in the middle of the Depression. Am I correct on that?
Yes, exactly. Right in the darkest period of the Depression.
So he has got a doctor's certificate, which, you know, I think Paul's right. We all need doctors like that. You need a mansion, and what were the cars? There was I saw something about he had, was it one or two? We'll just stick with one. One very expensive. Sorry, Paul?
You can't park your Cadillac during the Depression in just any old house. You need a mansion for that. So
Sorry, hang on. How many Cadillacs did he have?
Well, there's one in New York for sure, and there was one in California. So at least two.
Yep.
I have a picture of 4 of them, 4 different ones, when we tease that. But yeah, that
do we know what those cars were worth? Like, because
I can look that up. But the interesting thing is, Rutherford was very good at accepting, quote, gifts, unquote, from his devoted followers. And he didn't have any qualms about accepting gifts. But if you look at Russell earlier, if you try and look at the finances of the Watchtower Society in 1915 and 16, they were literally broke.
There's
a letter from Macmillan. We have some documentation on that we'll show. But a letter from Macmillan, recorded testimony regarding something Rutherford had said. They were literally broke. But there's a newspaper article in that weekly newspaper to Watchtower subscribers where somebody offered to buy Russell a car. and said, hey, you need this to help with the work. And we'll buy you a car and it costs this much and blah, blah, blah. And he basically says, no, I don't want it. He's broke at this time because of the other documented evidence about their finances. And he says, no, donate it to the work, and I'm just going to do what I've been doing. Well, Rutherford liked his money. He liked, we know how he smuggled in the alcohol and other things like that during the Depression, and his cars and the mansion, and just trying to deed the mansion to those ancient men of old. There's a way to try and smooth it over with the Watchtower readers. That made it more palatable, I guess.
Yeah. So what other document around that bestseller info? Actually, you got the show coming up. But is there any about Rutherford? Do you have any other interesting personal correspondence that you feel would be of interest to us that you could share on that stanza of the witness period?
Right now, I'm editing a video or a discussion Paul and I had on Miracle Week. And
Miracle Week, great stuff.
Miracle Week. That becomes a very interesting discussion. But in doing that research, there's a statement made by one of the Watchtower followers about the Ku Klux Klan.
Oh my goodness! Wow. Okay. Oh, see, I'm sitting down. Okay, yes.
So in Saskatchewan, this blew me away as well. So in Watchtower's history, they had these various radio stations around North America. One of them happened to be CHUC, C-H-U-C, in Saskatchewan, Saskatchewan, Canada. Say that fast 5 times. Anyway, they had their own radio station and they were broadcasting, but they also would sell time to whoever would buy it and play their programs. So you come to find out, Watchtower mentions that the Canadian government tried to shut them down. Well, one of the reasons they tried to shut them down is because they were selling time to the Klan in Canada. And they were broadcasting the Ku Klux Klan's they were broadcasting the Ku Klux Klan's propaganda in Saskatchewan, Canada. And there's a lot of documentation on this.
Sorry, sorry, can I just
yeah.
This is, I've got to ask, so hang on. The radio station was that a Watchtower radio station or not?
It was a Watchtower-owned radio station. CHUC, C-H-U-C, in Saskatchewan, Canada.
So like WBBR, I think, but that's the only one I remember. So
WBBR and WORD here in Batavia, Illinois.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, WBBR selling airtime to the Ku Klux Klan.
Not WBBR, C-H-U-C.
That one there in Canada.
The one in Canada was selling radio time to the Klan.
And so
that's documented in a lot of history books. Yeah.
Wow. Honestly, yes.
Once again, that is in the Proclaimer's book.
Well, actually, I put my daughter Charlie to sleep with the Proclaimer's book because I think fairy tales are very good for children. So, there is actually, look, I hope the listeners and the viewers are really, this has blown my mind. This is incredible, and I'm going to get you to keep plugging your channel. So it's very interesting because every single time the time period that this radio station is getting closed down in Canada, what year is this, first of all, just to know?
This would be the mid-1920s to the late 1920s. And if you look at the history of the Klan in Saskatchewan, Canada, look at the history of the Klan in Saskatchewan, Canada during that period. They brought down some of the provincial governments in Canada, the Klan, through some of their propaganda. So we'll get into a little bit of that in our upcoming discussion with some of the documentation on that. But they were using the Watchtower radio station to broadcast their propaganda, interestingly enough.
There is, and this is, and I hope I'm putting you on the spot because this is all live and not we haven't even spoken about it.
You didn't prep us with any questions, so we're flying by the seat of our pants here.
Good, I like it. That's the way we do it, okay? When I get rich enough, we'll get an editor and we'll all sound a lot better, I promise, So, no. The question that I have, I read somewhere that the witnesses followed segregation, and I believe Rutherford, I could be wrong on this, but I believe Rutherford spoke out against any action about what was classed as civil rights and so forth. Now, am I on the right path in that? Because I haven't actually seen, I've just seen commentary online condemning Watchtower for not doing anything about the civil rights movement. And this reminds me, if they're basically allowing the Klan, it would tie in. But is there evidence that Watchtower had the segregation thing going, or what?
Well, that was the whole point of,
what do you know?
Paul first. Put you on the spot now.
Yeah, go, Paul.
I'm gonna now. Here's my point. I get some people mad when I say this. I defend the Watchtower when they're right and when they remain truly neutral. They never really got involved in the segregation issues in anything I've read, and
Okay.
so I don't. Other than renting KKK radio, they never took sides in the what was going on with the Rosa Parks and all the history of going on during the 60s. They really kind of stayed away from that. Would you agree, Jeff, with that?
Well, they do have a little racist history, unfortunately, and
yeah,
but they
didn't promote it. They were more like they were with the Jews and the Nazis. They weren't against it, but they weren't like, hey, go ahead and do this. That's my take.
Yeah, they weren't promoting violence against it, but
Paul,
they did have a lot of racist comments. Go ahead.
Paul, my question is from what I remember, and I don't have a photographic memory, is that they had segregated congregations because sort of that was the law of the land, so you go along with the law of the land. But then if you go along, like Jehovah's Witnesses don't go along with the law of the land as soon as it disagrees with their faith. So the fact of the matter is, if they're not there wasn't an issue with segregation in their conscience. So do you know?
I have a very good.
Do you know if they had segregation?
I have a very good friend from the South, from Mississippi, and she said that the congregations there were segregated up until at least the 60s.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So.
But now let's be fair in the whole thing, and I hope I don't upset or promote anything or negative one way or another. You gotta remember, I live in the South. During that time, a lot of the people, they wanted to be with their own people. It's a lot of it is the government promoting the integration, whereas the black at that time was, hey, we want to be on our own, but we still want to ride the public bus. We still want to eat the rest of it. My honest interaction with Jehovah's Witnesses is this: anybody willing to volunteer a ton of time for free and promote the society's agenda and make money selling books, they never really cared too much whether they were black or white. So my opinion on the South thing, on what Jeff was saying, is A lot of the segregation that they did could have been self-imposed by their own choice and not entirely.
I see what you mean. No, fair enough.
Yeah, not entirely the society saying, hey, we want the blacks over in this congregation and the whites.
Yes, I know what you mean.
And if it was done that way, it might have been just based on where they lived and how they divided their territory up. So like you say, if you watch our channel on YouTube, Jeff and I are fair towards the society and the Jehovah's Witnesses when there's something there. But we're also, if they come right out and print something, hey, we're going to hold you accountable to it.
Yeah, that's good.
It's like the death threat we mentioned earlier, right? Rutherford's attitude towards that one was the right attitude. Don't prosecute my brother if he kills me. Leave it in the Lord's hands. He had a very good attitude. So we defend Watchtower where they need to be defended.
Well, that's your job to defend them. You're better people than me, okay? But I think Paul hit the nail on the head, and I think it's very fair what you're saying is that when it came to anybody that was willing to proselytize for Watchtower, and I think we have to be fair on that, is that, and that was my opinion too, I didn't see overt racism at all, is that Watchtower was ready and willing to accept you. But the question would be on that, I know race is a big issue, but if that was the case and they didn't have those deep bigotries, why was it that it took them so long for people of colour to ever be on their governing body? You know, I mean, I know you can't answer that, but it's interesting. But no, that's fair. I mean, look, the fact is that
it's just like their anti-Semitic statements. Their literature was in the early years, Rutherford's years, was so full of the anti-Semitic statements that it's just unbelievable, just the hatred they had about the Jewish people. After the war, they published a book called Let God Be True. And in the book, they say it's a false prophecy that they'll ever be in the homeland. And what they suffered under the Nazi regime is because of their sinfulness, because of their own.
Really?
Because of how bad it's pretty blatant. 2 years later, when Israel became a nation, they had to republish the book as a second edition, and they changed the entire statement. They made a false prophecy that Israel would never be a homeland, you know.
That's really so interesting, Jeff and Paul, because one of the things that Watchtower does very effectively is they shackle together the Holocaust and the experience of Jehovah's Witnesses together. And I know when they have opened up, there was the Holocaust Museum there in New York. Then they took a lot of the artifacts from Poland. My wife is Polish. We've been there. Her family members or people in her family relatives actually were killed there. And they put themselves as champions of anti-Semitism. But as you're saying, Paul and Jeff, is that that book, Let God Be True, which actually I've got a copy, I haven't read it, but if the first edition is saying basically that the Jews had it coming for them because of their, I would imagine, slight on Christianity or Christ or so forth, this is actually as anti-Semitic as it comes. Very interesting that that's the case.
Especially since they both suffered exactly the same thing under Nazi Germany. It was horrific. And yet, whenever they talk about...
One was self-induced. One was beyond their own, you know.
The Watchtowers were self-induced. Paul makes the point, and that's the point, that you cannot compare the experience of those who were deemed as unhuman, the Jews, the Gypsies, the Poles, homosexuals, whatever it was, that these people are incurable. They have to be exterminated. When Jehovah's Witnesses, and Paul makes that point, I'd like to hear a little bit more. It literally was, they could go in, and many Jehovah's Witnesses don't really understand this. They could go in and they literally could sign a piece of paper and they'd be out instantly. They were not sent to be exterminated, right? That wasn't the issue. Was they needed to renounce their faith. Now, I'm not against someone holding their faith. That's a beautiful thing, but it's a very different scenario to the Holocaust. When you were Jewish, you were dead. That wasn't the case with Jehovah's Witnesses. And if Paul could just add a little bit more to what I've said or so forth, I'd like to hear it, Paul.
Yeah, Matt, they had the opportunity to, basically, it's not choosing your religion. A lot of it was stop going against the German government. If they basically just stopped condemning the German government and kept quiet, they could have continued just like the Catholics and all the other religions and got about their way. But it's in one of our discussions, and that's why we're gonna make you go to the channel to hear it.
Please do.
Basically in one of our discussions we cover that. Why did they have to even go that route? Well, Jeff pointed out in discussion. Well, when you make one statement and then it doesn't come true, and then you keep going back and back and back, you can't dig yourself out of it. They dug themselves in a hole. They dug themselves in a hole of, hey, wait, we're saluting we're going against Nazi, but wait, we're promoting the American government. They were wish-washy on both sides of the pond, as they say. And we cover that very well in the neutrality discussion. I think that go to that, Matt, and I think if you haven't seen that yet, we covered everything we're discussing right here, and I think we did it pretty well.
Right.
Now, in the Watchtower videos on the Spirit of History, and they just posted a new one a couple of days ago if you go to their website, they basically say we stood firm against Hitler from the very beginning. And we know from their letters they didn't do that. But they didn't stand firm against the anti-Semitism. So there is a book published in French, German, and Polish called Crusade Against Christianity. And it was published in the late 30s, and it made a stand against Hitler, but only in regards to how Hitler was treating the Jehovah's Witnesses. In the book, they don't mention anything about how the Hitler is treating the Jews or any of the other political prisoners or the other various types of prisoners that were there. Again, Watchtower only caring for themselves.
Yeah. Do you have any? Okay, during the war effort, there was, and I've never seen the evidence of it, but there is, the discussion that Rutherford encouraged the witnesses to buy the war bonds or something to that effect. Have you got evidence to that one way or the other, or any archival evidence there?
Our neutrality discussion covers all that.
Don't you? Goodness me. Oh, goodness. Oh, get off the subject.
What I find amazing, Matt, is every question you're answering, we covered in the discussion. We really had a good discussion on that.
But we actually have some personal correspondence for that one, too, as well.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
You know what's wonderful?
We show on screen some of the personal correspondence proving that.
Hello. Hi. Am I able to ask questions, Matt?
You certainly can. Go for it. This is great. Is it?
Yes. Hi, Paul. Hi, Jeff. This is Apostle Linda James. And
Linda. Nice to meet you.
good to meet you guys.
Thank you for your comments on the site. They're wonderful.
Thank you. I don't know why, but Paul, you sound like you're miles away. You sound far, far away. I don't know why.
Linda, and that's the way we like her.
Stop it.
Because you know why? I've given him a script. I gave him a script, Linda. It's all scripted. People think it's live. No, this is all scripted. And I said, if in doubt, just repeat, Watchtower is bad. Watchtower is bad. So, what is your child's name? Watchtower is bad. It's not following it.
And my answer to the question is, he's using an iPhone. That's why.
The other religion. Yeah, the other religion.
Am I too I'm putting it closer to me now. Is this better?
No,
Yeah, you're better.
Somewhat, yes. Thank you. So, I was amazed because we didn't know who the guest was going to be. And I'm such a fan of you guys. When Matt introduced who was going to be on the show tonight, I felt like screaming with absolute enthusiasm. And I thought to myself, oh my God, I've turned into one of those nut job Beatles fans. You know how those crazy chicks used to scream? I was like, ah! I was like, what's wrong with me?
Paul, we got crazy followers.
Yes, I'm one of them. I'm one of those nut jobs. You guys are totally cool. But so I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So according to the story of Rutherford, from what I recall, he was going to go to school to be a lawyer. But because he was on the farm, it was understood that I believe his father allowed him to go to school to be a lawyer, but he had to find somebody to cover his spot on the farm. So the story goes that he hired somebody and paid somebody to do his job on the farm, the family business or whatever it was, while he went to lawyer school. Are you familiar with this story?
Yeah, I've heard that before. I haven't researched it though. I have heard that.
Yeah, I think it's how does it? It's very strange to me. I mean, go to lawyer school and have money to pay somebody.
My question is, how good of a lawyer was he? Some of the things he interprets, like the congressional record. Again, if you look at our neutrality discussion, just plug in the site, his whole first stance against the flag salute is how he's interpreting some congressional record, and he's completely taking it out of context, completely misunderstanding it. I don't think he was as good a lawyer as he claimed to be.
Yeah, and that's what I come to find when I'm reading transcripts from court cases, even today, from the lawyers of today. They're basically changing the definition of terminology. I don't know if that's a normal lawyer thing, or if that's just what they do and decide to be like, I'm the authority of the loaded language, and you will now understand this terminology as this. And then they go from there.
Linda, have you got any more? As we're and the guys will, before they end the show, I promise that each one of them will repeat 100 times each their program, just like Paul doesn't feel he's been ignored. Have you got
evidence for your story. I found your story, the evidence for your story.
Just now?
So the evidence, just now. I just looked it up.
Oh my goodness, cool.
So
you know I am. I'm totally a fan. I did this.
So December 1st, 1916, Watchtower, they republished. That was the Death of Charles Taze Russell issue. And so if you have one of the alternate prints of that particular issue, pages 383 and 384, there's an article called Pastor Russell's Successor, Judge Joseph F. Rutherford. And that story is in the third paragraph on that article. So if you email me, I can actually just send you the scans of that.
And this is from the Watchtower?
This is from the Watchtower. It's in the Watchtower.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I recall. Thank you. I'm sorry, I don't don't sound thrilled. I'm like, well, yeah, the Watchtower said that. I wanted to know if that's what actually happened. Because to me, that's painting Rutherford as quite the man of integrity to do this. You know, like that was he's a responsible person, is the way I'm seeing that's being painted for Rutherford. But I do appreciate what you're saying, and I can email you. Okay, where was I going to go next? It was Rutherford that helped Charles Taze Russell get all of his money into a situation through the company to get it to where when his wife, Russell's wife, Marie, went to court to separate from him so that he could be there saying, I don't have any money to pay her any alimony, you know? Or
I think what happened there is he decided to get around paying it. He could donate all his money to the society and change the name of the books from Millennial Dawn to Studies in the Scriptures. So when he said, you know, I can't remember the exact statement, but basically, you know, we don't have any money for Millennial Dawn. Why? Because now they're selling Studies in the Scriptures. So
that is so
and the unfortunate thing was that he refused to pay the money, and they had to find somebody else to pay the money that was, you know, should have been partly hers because they were a married couple. But just 7-8 years later, society is completely broke. So that's some of the research that we've been doing today, actually. I just sent Paul some information on that. It was very fascinating, all the evidence that we found for what happened to all the money. So what happened between Russell's period and Rutherford, what a change. Unbelievable.
Yeah, because from what I understood, it went into the corporations where the money that they as a team, Russell and his wife, because they were like, from what I understand, they were like the Bakers, you know, like they were the power couple, and yeah, like of that time, you know, and they were very supportive, and she did a ton of work to make that to make his ministry thrive. But what was also going on was suffrage, and she did not have any rights yet. So between these things that were going on, it was easy to, you know, not do her well, not treat her right or whatever.
I know Barbara Anderson's writing a book on that right now, but I don't know how soon she's going to release that.
Fascinating. I've wondered why the books, that series went from Millennial Dawn to, what is it,
Studies in the Scriptures. I think the timing of it is exactly during that period. That's how
I've often wondered why it changed. I've read something that said that they would be selling it at the door, and somebody would ask, was that the Millennial books? Oh, no, it's not. So were they the same books, but just given a different title?
They're the same books with different titles.
Fascinating.
So, yeah.
That's very deceptive.
While Rutherford may not have been a good lawyer and successful in business, he was clever, and I'm going to use the word clever. He was clever enough to recognize, hey, we've got printing presses, we've got people, we've got followers, and to take advantage of a situation, hey, this place is going broke. Religious thing and generosity and benevolence, we could make a lot of money off this and turn a profit. And the second Russell died, the society became a big publishing company. And everybody they got on board, again, with the advertise, you might as well have said, sell books, sell books, sell books. Because that's what he did.
But he did say it that way, literally. They were booksellers door to door. Everybody, not just.
He turned it around into a profitable corporation from one that was just floundering. So
I agree.
So I think Russell really believed what he was preaching, and that's why just a couple of years before his death, they literally run out of money. They're completely broke. They got to let 70 go from headquarters from Bethel. There's even McMillan himself is wondering, you know, we're broke. We don't know where we're going to, you know, even how we're going to get food, basically, is some of the evidence says. But to go from being completely broke to where they went as booksellers 5 to 10 to 15 years later, that's a complete turnaround. And they weren't trying to convert the world. They were only trying to find what they thought were the last of the 144,000. It was Rutherford who realized he could make more money by saying, oh no, we need to preach now to save all these people.
Millions,
and if you don't preach
now living will never die.
No. Billions now living will die horribly in Armageddon. What it became. So you need to go out, or you're blood guilty. So you need to sell books.
The blood guilty. And I agree with you. He did turn it around at the expense of the members. And the work that the members were manipulated to believe.
Jeff, can you hear me?
Had to be done.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, Jeff, are you there?
Yeah, somebody.
Jeff, can you hear me?
Yes.
It's Matthew.
Oh, hey, Matthew.
Yeah, I'm just we're running very low on time now. We've basically come to pretty much the end of our discussion. Jeff and Paul, can you please direct us to your channel, please? And you've got, just plug away, because it's just such a resource. Can you just quickly tell us where we can find you on YouTube and so forth, and avail ourselves of what you're doing, Jeff and Paul?
Paul, you first.
Watchtower History on YouTube. WT
Watchtower History on YouTube. I love it.
And I would say WT-History, or look up Judge Rutherford's Death Thread. That one will pop up right at the top of the list. But basically, if you're going to study the history, you need to be honest with the facts. Don't just try and find what you want to find. You want to find bad things about Watchtower, well, just look for that. Find all the evidence, good and bad, and give the evidence. Let the reader decide what it is, warts and all. If it's good towards Watchtower, it's good. If it's bad towards Watchtower, it's bad. But at least be honest with the facts. Be honest with the evidence. And that's what we're trying to do. So we're trying to be as honest with the documented evidence, all the newspaper work, the ancestry, the personal correspondence, all the FBI, CIA reports, all of that, and just say, here's the evidence. Let the reader decide, or the viewer decide, how to understand or interpret that history.
And that's
well, Jeff and Paul, what I'd like to say is this has been absolutely incredible. We've probably got more questions than answers. I would actually like to invite you back on my show in a fortnight's time. And I just think it's so fascinating. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, everybody. I hope that everybody that has it's actually been a real privilege, and I hope that everybody watching and listening has enjoyed this. Both of you are an incredible treasure and a resource, and we support what you're doing. And I invite you, if it's possible, to come back on in a fortnight's time on the program, and we will discuss things further, because I think you've really touched on something which is vital for the people that are looking at the Watchtower history, is that when Rutherford took over, and you couldn't have said it any better, is it went from being bankrupt or basically broke to this, as you said, they've got printing presses. And from that moment on, this was this push to the, advertise the King and the Kingdom, which was to then turn into what Watchtower became from that moment. So it's so important. So look, thank you very much, Jeff. Thank you very much, Paul. Linda, thank you very much for being such a supporter of not just their work, but mine. Thank you, Rick, for your love and support.
Thank you, Matt. We'd like to be back in a fortnight, but we don't know what fortnight means.
2 weeks.
It's an Australian term.
2 weeks. ongoing. God bless you. Thank you all, and I will speak to you very soon. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the program. Thank you, Paul and Jeff. Watchtower History. Thank you. Thank you. God bless. Bye.
Well, there you go. I mean, Matt, he cut his program short by about 10 minutes, but that's okay. But you guys did a great job, Jeff and Paul. I've been listening in here, and this is Rick Farron here at the command center. And really good job. You guys are doing great. I'm proud of you. Keep exposing the Watchtower. It's wonderful. Wonderful.
Thank you again, Paul. This has been a very fascinating discussion. Thank you all for watching. Like and subscribe. Leave some comments. Let us know what you'd like to see in the future. Get a whole story, not just the Watchtower's perspective, but from all the various splinter groups. What were they saying? So until next time, keep reading.